Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Walker, Senior Vice President of Public Policy for the Overland Park Chamber of Commerce. With me today is Lee Cross, a candidate for Johnson County Community College Board of Trustees. Today we're going to spend some time getting to know Lee and learn about his candidacy and the priorities he has if elected to the Board of Trustees. Lee, welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Kevin.
Let's start by having you take a few minutes to tell us about yourself and why you're running for this position.
Sure, I'm Lee Cross, Gerald Lee Cross Jr. I live and work in Overland Park. I have a wife and 2 kids. I'm an attorney. We've lived here for 13 years. I've served on the board for 8. Nobody really cares, not even my wife, but I'm 7th generation Johnson County, it turns out, by happenstance, and I'm proud of that, and I think Overland Park's a great place to live. And my whole family attended the college, Kevin. My father, my mother, they put each other back through school. My dad got back into KU, became a civil engineer, and my mother went through the old JOCO VOTEC program, which we later absorbed. But she became an LPN. And my brothers, when they got out of the Marine Corps, they came and went to JCCC, and my youngest brother is now an architect in Miami, but he met his Venezuelan wife here before they went down there. And I went there, I took 2 courses in the summer of 1999. My wife went to community college. And stealing from Bill Gates, the community college movement is the best way to invest in humans and teach them to do for themselves, which gives us an economy and a tax base upon which to, have a civil society. So I love serving at the college. I love what we do. It's a big part of my life and my career, and thanks for having me here today.
Oh, great that you could be here. Let's turn our attention to a few questions prepared by the Policy Council. What would be your top agenda priorities as a trustee, and how would you work towards the betterment of the college and the education that it provides?
Sure, it's a great question, thank you. I think the top priority has always been probably hiring a president. We have a good president in place, Dr. Andy Bound. And then number 2, just being able to have the money and have a relationship with the appropriators and all of our donors in the community. So I think keeping the mill at an appropriate place, because the people of Johnson County have put so much time and money into the college. But maintaining, I think, relationships with the business community, our foundation community. We have one of the largest community college foundations in America, as you know. And then just working to make sure that the businesses, the chambers, and all of our citizens feel that it's a place where they can go learn and earn a good job in the 21st century. So I would want to keep the mill rate at a responsible rate. I want to make sure we have solid relationships with all of those people, particularly as we've had politics injected into the race. I think it's important that all of our stakeholders feel represented and treated fairly. And number 3, though, Kevin, it's critical, I think, that we keep it affordable. I think we have this world-class institution. All community colleges are struggling with enrollment nationally, but keeping it affordable is, I think, the key. Eventually, the market's going to turn to a point where we need to accommodate more students, and it needs to be affordable.
You mentioned the mill levy and affordability, and this question gets to that. With respect to paying for the cost of educating the college's students, where do you stand regarding tuition increases versus mill levy increases, and what's the appropriate way to balance those interests?
Well, I'm a big fan of what we've done. As the state has cut back on its initial commitment of funding about a third from the state, a third from local taxpayers, and a third from students' fees and tuition. The state has dwindled to, I don't think it's this high. Someone said 17% last week. In my career on the board, it's been about 13 to 15%. So that means the county's picked up the tab, and we have frozen tuition, only raising it about $1 or $2 in the last 7 years. And that was on the heels of raising it 68% from 08 to 15. So if anybody wants to be blamed for why tuition's been frozen, well, you can blame me, because I advocated to keep it where it was, and we have become more competitive and someone that I think a lot of the students in Northeast Kansas has turned to. With that said, we have an increasing burden on our taxpayers, and Moody's revamped our credit rating just this past month. So it's probably time to look at raising tuition and fees on some level. But I commend the last 2 administrations for keeping it where it's been. And frankly, I think the legislature needs to pony up and do something about it. There will be people in the legislature who watches this. You know who they are. I could call them by name, and they watch everything. And I behoove them to do something about it. Like, we need more state aid. And not only Johnson County, man, our sister schools are in worse shape across the state. The other 18 schools and 6 technical schools are in worse shape than we are. But if the state's going to make a commitment at the birth of an organization, they need to stand by it.
Turning to another issue, we know Kansas is experiencing low unemployment rates and employers are struggling to find qualified workers, especially in skilled and technical trades. What role should the community college play with regard to workforce development?
Well, I think a leading role, and I think in the half century that we've been in existence, we've done that, reaching out to the chambers, reaching out to businesses, community leaders, I think even churches. I think they play a key role in the social mobility of any community. And we had somebody in a meeting the other day say that partnerships with the community college is a little nebulous or loosey-goosey. We were asking the staff to define that. And I spoke up in defense of the staff, and this other trustee is a friend of mine, so I wasn't trying to be too insulting. I just said, look, if it sounds nebulous, it is, right? Partnerships are born, you know, in awkward and funny moments at a mixer or somewhere, and then you begin reaching out and working with each other, and I think that's critical. So I think knowing what the business community needs, knowing what the community needs is at the top of what we need to do, and then it helps us stay current, right? We're not just having professors roll into class and dust off 10 or 20-year-old notes. You know, we teach the best available information and take great pride in producing an extremely valuable workforce.
And what do you see as the key aspect of the community college's coordination with our area high schools, other universities, and other post-secondary institutions?
Could you ask that again, please?
What do you see as the key aspect of the community college's coordination with high schools, universities, and other post-secondary educational institutions? How should they all be working together?
Well, I was psychology poli-sci undergrad, and there's a term that I never forgot. It's called propinquity, like just familiarity and relationship building, something I learned from, frankly, the business community, and as a younger lawyer and politician wondering why I'm going to all these meetings. Why do I need to have relationships with all these people? They just matter. You never know how you're going to need them. At a minimum, you need to know who each other are. And there are some tensions right now, quite candidly, that I get tired of people not addressing like giant elephants in the room. So, you know, there's tensions right now between us and area high schools. And my goal here is not to develop a headline. It's just to say we need to know who we are. Some of the high schools feel like we outsource some of the teaching to them and their personnel. And I think knowing who we are matters, and then working to communicate and develop better approaches is the key, right? So, you know, having access to area high school students is critical, but then figuring out how we can work together matters. And so I don't know if that's a good answer, but that's just as honest as I can be hearing that question. Thank you for reading it again.
No problem. On a grander scale, what's your vision for the college 10 years from now?
Well, I mean, you know, I went to 2 state schools, so I've never been the smartest person in the room, and I really enjoyed not messing things up. So, you know, continuing the tradition of excellence that we have is my top priority. And then, you know, bending to what's needed here in the 21st century. It frustrates me to no end that our enrollment is down. Some of the candidates in this race have hammered us for, you know, enrollment being down, but the budget's up, and I don't know or necessarily agree with their numbers. And again, it's another elephant in the room, so we might as well talk about it. It's a good point, and I wish we could have enrollment up. I promise you, a lot of smart people from national searches have studied it, and it's just a problem that confounds the higher education movement nationally. You know, enrollment of women is up. Not a bad thing. It's just this phenomenon that we see, 60% enrollment for women. I think it matters that as development has gone south in Johnson County, you know, the ease and access to the college has gone down. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying you've had a population locus move south. The point of this is just to have enrollment up. I think it matters because the state, I think we had to pay an allotment last year. The governor had us pay money back, or all of higher ed had to pay money back. So I think to protect our budgets, but not just to take money in any bureaucratic sense, but to have it and use it and put it back into the community matters. So in the next 10 years, I'd like to see enrollment up and continue doing what we're doing.
And my last question for you is, why do you believe you are uniquely qualified to serve on the Board of Trustees, and why are you seeking this office overall?
Well, using Occam's razor, I mean, probably the easiest explanation is I have trust issues, so I don't trust anybody else to do it. But the reality is, I care a lot about the college. I have 8 years of service, 8.5 years, thanks to the bonus half year to one of the legislatures. And you know, I want to continue to do it. Having good and reasonable people matters. I think Overland Park is a great place to live. I dearly love Johnson County. It means the world to me and my family, the education it has afforded my children. So I want to continue to do that. I'm a busybody, and you know, I'm a lawyer. I mean, politics is inherent in the law. And I'm sure someone taught me this phrase that I'm stealing, but you know, if you don't play politics, politics plays you. And so I love being a leader. I love to talk, as you can see, and I feel I'm qualified to do it. I think we've done a good job.
Well, Lee, I thank you for spending some time with us today. And before we close, I want to give you a couple minutes to provide any final thoughts you'd like to offer.
Sure. It's been my great honor and pleasure to serve the people of Johnson County for the past 8 years. I'm asking for another 4 years because I think we've done a good job in the midst of a global pandemic, keeping the college alive. I think it was Heather Owsley at SMSD that had a phrase, SMSD Strong, so I stole that. I bought the website jccccstrong.org, which goes to crossforthecollege.com. And I'd encourage everybody to vote on or before November 2nd. There really is a great number of candidates in this race. I think that some are more reasonable than others, and I'd sure encourage you to vote on it before November 2nd. So thanks for having me.
Well, you're welcome. And in regard to voting, let me remind everyone that advance voting by mail begins on Wednesday, October 13th. Advance voting in person begins on Saturday, October 23rd. And of course, Election Day is Tuesday, November 2nd.